Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is DG Chichester, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Listen to that voice. That's the voice of a podcaster. That.
Where did that come from? That was awesome.
Wow, you did it a long time ago. All right, kids, welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. Got a special one here for you. Of course, it's me, it's Lilith, and of course, since we're talking the 60th anniversary of Goldfinger, we're talking to the #1 James Bond fanboy, writer Mr. DG Chichester.
Thank you, guys. I don't know what I'd be. I guess I'll be 009, you know. Lilith is 007. That makes you 008, Phil, so I'll be 009.
I'm 069, actually, but it's
okay. Dan, you're the wife's not home, so you're 00 staying up past 10. So
exactly. 00. I haven't cleaned the sink out yet, so
All right. So yes, I know we were talking about covering Goldfinger, yes, because it is the 16th anniversary, and they were like, we have to have Dan on because, again, you've professed your love for James Bond since you said since childhood, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I was I was a huge fan, you know, from early on. I think I became like a really diehard fan when I worked at a bookstore when I was a teenager, and you know, I would be the one in charge of like sort of ordering the books, and like as I was going down the list, they had this like great book about like the cinematic history of James Bond. It was this very British book, so it was this really kind of like deep dive into them all, and I ordered it for myself, and they just got into it in such detail up to the point of whatever movie it was at that time. I fell even more in love with it, and then went through the various phases of starting with Roger Moore and thinking he was the best, and then kind of working through the rest, and then finally
so where did you land on that?
Oh, I landed on
first question.
I landed on Connery, you know.
Oh yeah,
the correct answer. I'm a 90s kid, so you know Pierce Brosnan is my James Bond, but I love Connery.
Pierce was wrong though. If Pierce had come in, I think when he had originally been
asked to
proposition to do it when he was on Remington Steele, and then they wouldn't let him leave his contract. I think he would have made a much bigger impact. I mean, he was good, but I think he would have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Really stinked up.
Hindsight's 2020. I know some days Pierce Brosnan just wakes up, dang it.
Yeah, exactly. If only.
So how do you feel about Goldfinger being the third movie made, but the 8th book in the series?
I don't.
Her Majesty's Service got caught up in some legal. There's a whole bunch of things that kind of caused Goldfinger to be the third movie.
I mean, I think Goldfinger is as perfect a movie in that franchise. It is the perfect movie. I think it is. It is the anchor point. It is what everything could and should be. And I think
when you think of a James Bond movie, most people like the witty dialogue, the villain, the woman, the chase scenes. This is the movie.
Yeah, this is it, and this is what established. Yeah, so far. I mean, I always looked at North by Northwest as the proto James Bond movie, and then this became where they nailed all the elements of the formula, and the right balance of pretty much everything, you know, and the music, you know, really just hit its stride. You know, John Barry just took it to another level. There's just so many great things about it.
And Guy Hamilton's been chasing this villain ever since.
yeah, you know, I mean, and it's a form, you know, and then it becomes a formula, and then they try to repeat it in the exact same way, and as they varied it up over the series, obviously different highs and lows, but you get the strength of the villain. This was my other surprise, like, you know, for this, you know, these are my, you know, my Goldfinger toys that I bought at a convention and actually ripped out of the package in front of the vendor and he almost had a heart attack, like so. But
well, good for you though. Good for you, honestly. I couldn't do it, but good for you.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you, Dan. Good for you. But Gert Frobe is such a great presence, and it's Odd Job is just such a weird, strange hench villain. Just and it stands on the villain. It stands on the strength of the villain, as so many things do. And when you're going to put the villain in the title, then it really has to work extra hard. And this one really does.
Shout out to Shirley Eaton too, though. I think she's one of my top 3 favorite Bond girls ever. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, super strong, casting, throughout. And the thing that, watching again, and I was saying to Phil before you got on this morning, Lilith, I've seen this movie many, many times. But what always strikes me watching it is that opening Miami shot and the music, and it's sweeping around, and just thinking about, we're so jaded today because we can just, we can visit Miami in virtual reality, or we could type in Miami and we're going to get this great set of immersive photos. But, that wasn't available and then clearly. And these movies were travelogues as much as anything. And just the sort of the bombast of showing an exotic location, like,
remember, it's from the British lens, which is what I love, which is what some of those later films, like the most modern era of Bond, has kind of lost. It definitely has like an American gaze to it, where I kind of like that Anglophile lens of looking at different things.
Right.
As an American, most things are catered to you, but not a Bond film.
And it has that, and they've recaptured it a little bit, on and off. But I mean, the whole setup with the villain of meeting early on, the golf game is like superior, and you wonder how that would go over, not with today's audiences, but just with today's executives. They would be like, oh, that's too slow, we can't have that. But it's such a great scene. It's such a terrific scene, and builds the tension and just shows, each other trying to outwit it. And then I love the bit at the end of that scene where Gert Frobe, and I know it's not his voice, they dubbed him, but his body language when Bond is like, after Odd Job is like, trash the statue, and he's like, well, what's the club secretary going to say about that? Well, nothing, Mr. Bond, I own the club. And it's just such a great, like, kind of flicking of his, like, like F you and this great superiority aspect to the character.
The thing that tickles me is that it's a high stakes gin rummy game, like not poker, gin rummy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who knows? But at that point, now everything would be poker because that's the only game people know. But presumably in the '60s,
not canasta, not pinochle.
Gin rummy was the thing, right?
Love it.
And what's that hat of Odd? I mean, have they ever explained what that hat of Odd Jobs is made out of? Is that adamantium? Because I mean, he's just killing people, breaking statues.
I think it's made out of old British biscuits.
I think there was something in the book about it. It didn't have like a razor wire edge or something to it like that. It's established in the book, and then I think it was just presumed with the way that it sort of like smashes into things and sticks in the edge of the trees and doesn't quite. In the book, I think he chops her head off with it. I think it's like a pretty severe 80% decapitation. Which is just so handled so coyly in the movie.
And what surprised me is like, not only, I mean, we didn't just fridge one sister, we fridged both sisters.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Right. Yeah. But and she didn't even sleep with him.
It's a Bond film. I don't know what you're.
I know. But I just thought, maybe they kill the one, he'll sleep with the other one. But yeah, no, there's like Dan said, they killed the second one. He didn't even sleep with her.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought this was like weird, like modern movies would never do this, but it's like we don't even meet Pussy Galore until like halfway through the movie.
Yeah,
she would have been hanging out with Goldfinger the whole entire movie from the first time we see her.
Right.
Yeah,
she would have been the hench.
An hour
I think that has to do a lot with the that her name is Pussy Galore. They wanted to change it to Kitty Galore, but like they had like a big behind the scenes fight about it. Like they might as well not even make the movie if you're gonna make that change kind of thing. So
Right.
I think that's what caused her not to be in so much of the movie, honestly.
I think didn't they do a preview or something, Lilith, and like the audience didn't even like flinch, you know, and I think,
to be fair though, Brits are a little more prudish than Americans, so I totally kind of understand the hindsight of when this film was made, but it's like everybody knows that people read more too, so everybody kind of knew the book at that time, so it's kind of like
the book was hugely popular, and especially after you know, Kennedy had said From Russia with Love was his favorite book, and then that really, you know, made the books take off even more so. But I think Honor Blackman was also, you know, well known for the Avengers, so I think there was a lot of, all right, well, it's a character we know, right? You know, it's a personality we know. There's a lot of let it get away with certain things that maybe with a lesser known actress or other things people might have balked. I don't know. The fact we just said Pussy Galore, like, you know, here it's like in 2024 or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't let that fly today. No. Okay, can I tell you my funniest? One of my funniest. Okay, no, my two funniest scenes from this movie. Well, in the beginning when James Bond comes out of the water and he has that duck.
Yeah, the duck.
And the other one is when the old lady at the gate with the machine gun.
I love her. Yeah, I love her. Just rattling away.
Yes.
Yeah, the outlandish is, again, it's a tough thing to balance, and they made it. They made those things kind of work. I mean, and the whole even at the end of that scene at the opening of the whole blind opening, which has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. You know, when he unzips the
wetsuit, and
he's got the whole thing underneath, and he's got the flower too. You know, he just like pulls it out. It's you know, these are all things that then would get over parodied, you know, in the Austin Powers thing. But at that moment in time, it could not possibly have seemed cooler. I mean, this movie was enormous. I mean, I've seen the size of the posters and the scope of, the billboards and the scope of what they were doing and the lines. I mean, it just feels like it was off the hook in terms of like the audience energy and participation. It's, you know, I don't think you can, you know, it feels like it was like Taylor Swift level, you know, almost like in terms of energy, you know, and for what was coming across. I don't know if that's true or not, but it had to be spectacular to have that level of anticipation, and then go in and see this actually deliver on it with those types of moments, right?
Well, yeah, I think
I mean, they had a budget of $3 million and made $125 million back at the box office.
Wow.
So.
Right. Which
like,
well, I think when you adjust it for inflation, that's still impressive. But like, you know, travel was a little cheaper, because that's one thing about the James Bond movies is the scope, the travel, the beauty, the cinematography. But don't ever sleep on the sound design either, because I think Goldfinger was the one that won the Bond franchise an Academy Award for sound design. They've won a couple for special effects too, but I think specifically Goldfinger won the one for sound design.
Yeah,
totally. If you listen, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's all there. It's all there. And John Barry again was like at the top of his, you know, game. And I always thought it was like this stodgy guy. I don't know why. And it's like, oh, you know, he's a composer. You know, I'm thinking John Williams in my head or something. But there's a great documentary about the music of James Bond that I think it's on Amazon Prime or something. And John Barry was just the coolest dude. He lived with Michael Caine. He was like, you know, he was this hip, you know, 60.
Oh, well, there you go.
You know, yeah. I mean, he was the total like 60 swinging 60s like dude, which makes the music even more impressive, you know, over time.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the one-liners. I love the one-liners, you know, like when he throws the thing in the bathtub, shocks the guy. He's like, oh, shocking. Or, you know.
Right. Shocking. Positively shocking. Yeah.
At the end, where's the butler? He blew a fuse.
Right.
Yeah. The ending's a little harsh, though. I was just like, oh.
What?
Right out the window.
Oh, he gets sucked right out the window. He's such a strong villain. It's, it is. You have to wonder if there was ever any consideration of like bringing him back. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Like, they were like,
they
nah,
brought
he's
Blofeld
gone.
back, 1,000 times, and Goldfinger was such a strong, villain. You had to think that there was some consideration, but maybe they were just locked into the books, and they had that to draw from, so they could keep going through and varying it up there.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
never, movies, comics, you never see a body. They can always come back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's maybe that'll be the reboot, with whatever's next. They'll remake Goldfinger on a bunch of virtual sets that will look nothing like anything, and we'll have this cheap CGI feeling to it. But the pacing, the action, everything kind of holds up really,
Oh yeah,
really well. Even though obviously there's speed ramp things, and
There's fluff.
yeah,
Definitely.
and the car chase on the Pinewood Studios lot, it's like,
Yes.
to substitute for whatever Goldfinger's factory with even some signs that look like they were just hung right before the scene, like, entrance strictly forbidden, like somebody printed this out, and probably is like over the sign that says Pinewood Studios Commissary or something like that. It doesn't quite match. And then the cars sort of like crisscrossing and driving past each other. There's a little Keystone Cops, but the strength of the car, the Aston Martin itself is just landmark, right? In terms of delivering on the gadgets, and the flair of that. That's one thing I miss from the Craig movies a lot.
Yeah.
I had hoped they would get not to that level of outlandishness, that can't be, that would take it into parody, but I think there could have been a little bit more, with that in those films.
What's on my holy grail is the Corgi Toys Aston Martin DB5
Yeah.
model. That is on my holy grail. If I ever come across it, in box or not, I don't care how much it is, I'm gonna get it. This made me fall in love with Aston Martins. I was obsessed with Aston Martins when I was younger, like those and Jaguars.
They've
Until
remade that
Ford bought
toy,
Jaguars, and it was like,
haven't
okay,
they?
never mind.
Didn't they remake that toy or
I want the
something?
original though,
You want the original? I
where
think.
it's actually made out of metal, not plastic.
Oh yeah. I mean, I tell you, I did have the original. Just dating myself beyond, but it's one of those things that got lost over time. But
Yeah,
it was. I remember it. I
it's
remember.
very detailed. So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember lusting after it like forever at the toy store. It was like in a
and
cabinet with all
they
the
had that
corgis.
particular one at the 64 New York World's Fair too. So
Did they really?
yeah, they went on a like I to be alive at that time, right? They had such a great advertising campaign for this movie, just the marketing campaign. It was just great. Like
Oh yeah. Well,
Pussy
that.
Galore, like paint, Shirley Eaton painted in gold. Like everybody knows that one, but they were at the World's Fair. They had a lot of merch. They even had tie-in clothing, like the tuxes and stuff, and the dress shoes.
Oh, I'm
And I
not
have to find
surprised.
the James Bond board game. I have to find that based on Goldfinger. Yeah, I have to.
Hang on a second. Let me see if. Hang on. Let's see if we can make this work.
Is he gonna grab it? Oh, don't tell me he has it. That's gonna be so cool.
Falling over myself.
we can't see where the wall safe's at.
Exactly.
It's like 007.
That's like Batman 66. You like pull back the head of a Daredevil bust and you like turn the. Oh, there's the board game.
I don't know, but it's not a Goldfinger game. It's just like
the regular one.
Yeah, I don't. Was there a Goldfinger specific like edition?
Yeah, somebody was telling me that on the forums, and I'm like, I have to find it if it exists.
Oh, I don't know. It's like I found this like at a tag sale. It's pretty wonky, like at the on the inside, but it was kind of I bought it more for the box like than anything, but it was.
That's definitely a talk piece. Yeah, that's so cool.
In college there was a kind of a cool like tchotchke junk shop like over in the East Village, and they had the briefcase. You ever see the briefcase? The toy briefcase, and it was like, From Russia with Love, and it had the gun and like, a code book and all this kind of stuff in there, and it was whatever it cost, it was like it was nothing today, but at that point it seemed like a lot. But I was like
And then
lusting
you look
after.
on eBay and you kick yourself.
Yeah. Well, no, I was like, oh man, oh man, oh man. And I finally got up the money and the nerve to go back. And then by the time I went back, it was, it was gone. But it was just this, it exists. It's real,
But yeah, I didn't realize. I mean, this has to be. I mean, this is one of the biggest Bond movies because I didn't realize like a lot of it.
I think it is.
I mean,
this
a
is
lot
like
of
the peak, and it kind of starts.
well, like
down.
a lot of the I don't want to say tropes, but the things people associate with James Bond are like from this movie. You know,
Yeah.
Oh, do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Right. Or taking the death trap. I mean, the first two movies track, and they start to establish. I mean, there's the super harshness of Dr. No. The bigger than life, type of stuff of his lab and such, but it's then you start to get some of the gadgets, and From Russia with Love and harder villains, but then it clicks with Goldfinger. And then
it always tickles me that it's Casino Royale. It took so long to make Casino Royale where you're just like
right. But Casino Royale, the remake, is not I guess it's a remake, but technically, but the Daniel Craig one does a great job of establishing that same thing. The whole poker game is that feeling of tension, between these villains, between him and the villain, rather. It does. There is a great build, there that really happens with Mads Mikkelsen and such, but.
Oh yeah, we get the Hoods convention here.
Yeah, that's that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Lilith.
I think my favorite fact about this movie is the actor that plays Oddjob was like a Olympic medalist, silver medalist. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. Was he? Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Was he a sumo wrestler at some point?
I think he's a regular wrestler.
Just a regular wrestler. Yeah, he was impressive. But the Hoods convention was hysterical. I mean, I always thought it was hysterical. I think even from the first, but you rewatch it and what's going on here? What you doing?
Hey, who turned out the light?
Exactly.
What's you doing?
It definitely plays right into people's expectations of a mobster. But now I think that that plays off as the most cliched thing in the movie. All these hoods and such. But they would continue that. They would continue that right up through Diamonds Are Forever. And they've got a bunch of hoods in that one too, who are like taking him for a ride, and they're like that's that same feeling and cadence, and people who tried to audition for The Sopranos and couldn't make it, that sort of thing.
I was tickled pink when they're talking about that Goldfinger irradiating the golden Fort Knox, and he's like, "Oh, it'll be 58 years," and
right.
Well, that would be 2022. So.
All we do is take us off the gold standard, and we're fine. So Nixon saves us. But as I said this morning when we touched on that, I mean, I think it's the only quote unquote realistic James Bond plot in the movies. It's the only one that sort of feels like, oh, that could kind of work, right? In a just purely criminal way. There's no giant tankers swallowing submarines or satellites made out of diamonds, burning away parts of the earth or any of that kind of stuff. But it's it has just this. Well, I just want to make money,
I mean, yeah, it would affect the whole world, but yeah, it's basically a crook just being a crook. Yeah,
right. Yeah, this very clever, like awesome, crook. It's this Hans Gruber effect of like, no, I'm an exceptional like. An exceptional thief.
I mean, you even compared him to the Kingpin this morning. Yeah.
I think the timing is probably right around the same, and I don't necessarily think it has any influence on that, in that character, but it does have a feeling of a very proto Kingpin, sort of feeling, to it, that, that big, heavy, imperious, I'm in control, of all these things, and, you're a bug to me, sort of feeling, but.
And if you see a Rolls Royce Phantom specifically, that guy's a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. with the chauffeur out there in the wet, while you're in the back.
Remember when I was talking about that on the when we were covering Azrael Sex through Night? I was like, well, Ra's al Ghul's got a phantom, he's the bad guy. That's where that comes from. Yeah.
And he's got a PC, not an Apple. It's something. Well, the common cues. Wait a minute, he's on an Android, not an iPhone. He must be the villain.
Oh yeah, because Apple has that whole thing. Yeah, they won't let bad guys use their phones in the movies and stuff. Yeah. What was there was something else I was just thinking of. But just all the tropes. It's like, oh, here, man talk, honey, slaps her on the butt, just like man talk. Here, let's see you later.
The thing that I didn't catch until much later. You always think of James Bond as like the epitome of cool, right? And he is for the most part. But there's that one bit at the beginning where he leaves the girl, and he goes into the kitchen to get the champagne, and he's like, to drink Dom Perignon, above 38 degrees, is like listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. And it's like, it's this line of like stodgy conservatism that just,
as a Beatles hater, I kind of, and a champagne connoisseur, I kind of
but yes, but it just, it slaps as this moment of total, like I said, conservative aspect, which you don't necessarily think of that character. That character is like against the grain, it seems, for the most part. But then again, and he's British too, so they hate the Beatles as well. But it must have been right at that moment where it felt like the adults in the room wanted to stick it to these upstarts,
those beatniks.
Yeah, these beatnik. Anyway, I've always thought that was such a
like I said, as a Beatles hater, that doesn't even just
no. Yeah, I get it. Like from the music point of view, totally. But it just feels like that like I said, very super conservative feeling.
And again, another funny part, I just think like all the spy crap, on Goldfinger's private plane, there's like 50 peepholes to like look into that.
Yeah.
Where he's getting,
right.
Oh,
if I can't
like,
keep on your
one? Let me look in this one. Okay.
Right. As opposed to just one camera. Right.
Yeah, super spy craft. Yeah, and then they
right. That would have been too much.
But any movie or whatever, if someone mentions there's an ejector seat's getting used.
Chekhov's ejector seat, absolutely.
Right. It's all checked off. I mean, and the Q scene is brilliant, and you grow so used to that having become its trope over time of Bond goes in, Q is is disdainful, Bond doesn't pay attention, but this is the one that establishes it all, right? And that rhythm between the two really clicks here. But that whole thing is a checklist, right? That whole thing of like, well, there's missiles, and there's a changing license plate, and there's this, and there's the ejector seat. It's sort of like, okay, all of those are going to come back around, in time. But it's Connery's reaction, especially toward the end of the scene. It's like, well, just give me your undivided attention for an hour, or so, and then you just the look on his face is just so brilliant. I mean, he is so in it, later on, as he sort of grew tired of the whole thing, I guess. He was phoning it in, so much more. But right here in this moment, he's just totally zoned in and having a ball, I think.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Oh no, yeah, I bought it in this one. Yeah, no,
I was gonna say, I thought the laser would be your favorite part, Phil, because that's the joke we make all the time from the Austin Powers movies.
Oh yeah, laser.
The laser. Well, yeah, and they changed it from buzzsaw in the book, which actually would have been more ferocious in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess the laser sort of feels, high tech, and it felt more like science fiction-y. But when you think about it, if there had actually been like a buzzsaw, like coming right up toward his crotch, that would have been pretty ferocious too. I'd read a story, one of the behind the scenes, things where, even though it was, sort of obviously the light itself is make believe, or they had to put that in post. But Connery said that they basically had to have two guys under the table, one burning it and the other with a flashlight to kind of create the light. So they're still like kind of burning the metal, or even if it was thin
too close
metal.
for comfort.
Exactly. Like, so he's strapped in, and they're like doing this thing in real time. He had said, yeah, that wasn't a great moment.
One false wind and
yeah.
Well, is that the way to introduce that laser too? Because that laser does come into play later then too. So
Right. I'm glad. Yeah, they do bring it back, which is as opposed to I just happen to have a convenient laser for torturing my associates. But the disdain there too is just, as you said before, no, I expect you to die. That's great, in its moment, because that's a realistic, big air quotes, but that's a realistic sort of take. I don't really care about you. Like, that's that disdain again from the superior man. He would have gotten along well with, Wolfgang von Strucker, from what we were talking about this morning. It's just, I don't care. Like, you're a bug to me. I don't care. You're not, you don't know anything. So it's not, I'm torturing you. It's just, I expect you to
just taking out the trash. That's
exactly. This is wonderful.
Like Strucker from Daredevil Black Armor out now.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Did I do that plug well? Thank you for building on that.
But yeah, no, I love how they write Goldfinger. Where it's like, yeah, Bond's beneath his contempt at that point, but then later on, as he's letting Bond figure out his master plan. He's like, aha, he's basically sitting there with his drink, saying, see how genius I am,
Yeah. I mean, he's actually having like a fun conversation at the moment, with their mint juleps,
like, put together my brilliance. Yes.
I will admit, like, from that moment forward, I always wanted to know what a mint julep tasted like, just based upon, like, refreshing, isn't it? And it's like
fresh muddled herbs. So
I mean, I probably, there's a, in Daredevil Black Armor, there's I think just a fun line where, like, Strucker's just like, amusing spectacle, isn't it? I mean, that's basically the same as, like, oh, this is mint, tart mint julep, isn't it? It's kind of like my super villain, influence, probably comes from Warwick Goldfinger as much as anybody else.
And I just love Pussy Galore's Flying Circus. Just
yes.
Also, the project's name is Operation Grand Slam.
Yes. I would like to have seen what Pussy Galore's Flying Circus did when they weren't, like, nerve gassing people. Were
they like the Blue Angels of their day?
I don't know. Like, I don't even remember that from the book. I cannot recall how it plays out there, but it's sort of like just established. Yes, we have 7 or 6 or whatever, crack, pilots in their little planes.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And their perky little, outfits, which give the Chinese nationals a run for their money. Look, we're all running out in our little, flying circus costumes, I guess.
Well, yeah, Bond, the good guys running around in a very nice suit, and all the bad guys are wearing their pajamas. Yeah.
Right.
And the pajamas are the future. Star Trek told us so.
And the uselessness of his Felix Leiter is just like, he's just sleeping with some broad. He's like,
oh yeah,
you're good about that.
You're on top of
sleep on the
good thing you got you watching out for him.
They're watching the ranch, and they just see him walking around with pussy in each.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's my James. Yeah,
that's it. I got to go back and take a nap. All right. But I guess he comes. He's there for the clutch, so that's what counts.
But yeah, so much in this. Killing the one gangster who didn't want to go along with the plan.
Yes, the enormous effort to kill that guy, which is a great
Mr.
scene.
Solo. Again. They called him Mr. Solo for a reason.
Right.
Oh.
But it's just, the whole thing is so elaborate.
Yeah, crushing him in the car, and then
crushing him in the car with the gold.
Yeah, the Goldfinger's like, I'm gonna get my gold out of there. I'm like, why did you put the gold in there in the first place?
Right, exactly.
Or have Oddjob take it out before you crush the car.
Exactly. He's already killed him. So it's like, but it's still a great scene. but it definitely fails. Once you get past the cool of it, you're like, wait a minute, there's that one has limited logic, to it.
Well, as Bond told Pussy, he's like, he's quite mad,
Right.
Oh, that was funny too when Goldfinger's giving the demonstration and Bond's just like looking through the model table.
Yes. Hidden right below the elaborate aspect of that whole setup for a bunch of people he's just going to kill. I mean, that's also, again, it's just like it feels so cool. Look at this villain, he's killed everybody here. But on the other hand, it's like, why did you go to I get killing Solo, right? Solo didn't want to go along with it.
Yeah, he needs
so of course he's going to get killed. But then he kills all the rest of them. So why did you go through the whole thing of like, come along with me? Yeah.
Well, again, I guess he just likes the ego stroke, and like when he does with Bond, it's like, oh, here's my master plan, and the rest of them are like, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's do it. It's like, oh,
right.
Any more questions? From
exactly. Yeah. He's David S. Pumpkins, it's like, any questions? The one thing that like comes through here and then carries through to me the best of the Bond films is just also Ken Adams' like set design. I mean, those sloping like ceilings, the way it kind of creates that, that perspective, and from everything from the right from the opening inside the oil thing where he goes to kind of blow things up. Everything's got these kind of like angles, and then when you get to Fort Knox, it's just this beautiful set. That set, we were just talking about, where he's got this elaborate mechanism of, showing his plan. They just have just such great depth and work on screen in such a terrific way, which an ordinary, flat room would never carry that effect, that you're in another place, right? You're in the epitome of cool.
Because I didn't even realize that they'd only filmed in Miami for like 5 days, that they actually recreated Fountain Blue on the Pinewood set.
Did they really?
Until very recently, yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, probably the exteriors.
Now that's set making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They
don't do it like that anymore, unfortunately.
No. They'd throw up the volume from the Mandalorian and just like call it a day, and
it's cool, but use sparingly. That's the thing about technology for anything. It's cool, but like use it sparingly. Art is humanity's thing. You can only
it gives people something to react to as well. And I imagine, I mean, I probably that volume sort of thing gives actors more to work with because they're seeing it move in real time. And if it's such high resolution as it seems like
James Cameron didn't do all that work on the Avatar for you to just do that.
Right. No, if James Cameron did all that work so you could try to hold your breath for 12 minutes underwater, and but
with a duck on your head.
Exactly. But the I think that also immersed the audience in it, sort of getting back to what I felt, and mentioned at the beginning, people never saw these things. They didn't go to that place in Miami, right? They didn't go to the Swiss Alps,
Furka Pass, so beautiful.
Yeah. People just, to them, this was their travelogue, to these things. I think that's why they also enjoyed some of those moments of the car driving along, because it was beautiful and it kind of took you in. And if you could imagine seeing this on like a Cinemax, Cinerama, screen or whatever, I imagine this was probably on some equivalent of like an IMAX gigantic screen in the day, and just having this unfold in front of your eyes with an audience, who's laughing at every one of these things and feeling those cool moments. Not now where you go and there's, 4 schmucks, doing their reserved seat at, AMC, and, it's like, the guy who sits right next to you, even though, there's no other, every other seat in the theater is empty because.
Or the person sitting in front of you.
Well, listen, if you're in the center of the movie theater, it's your fault. It's your own fault. Sorry.
Yeah. That is my fault.
Perfect spot.
I know.
What it is.
I know. I take full blame.
I do the rows right in front of the handicap spots. Yeah, no, seriously, that's where I always sit now.
Mm-hmm.
Easy access to the bathroom and the first one out of there.
I might try that next time I see something worth seeing.
Hey, if you want tips to avoid humanity, Lilith Hellfire.
Yeah, writing a whole book about it.
Oh, but yeah, that opening scene. Luckily, the bad guys were keeping that nitroglycerin handy to just blow up.
Well, he didn't he bring that with him? I thought that was in his belt.
I thought the barrels were there, but he brought the
he brought the plastique. Right. And then he spread it out. And, whatever the meth lab or whatever he was blowing, the heroin lab. That's something. They had that throwaway line after he meets the guy in the bar, where they won't be, financing it with heroin flavored bananas or something like that. But it's just that whole cold opening. It doesn't really matter. It's just 15 minutes of cool and fun and then connects to nothing.
I mean, it basically gives you the general plot of James Bond. He blows up the bad guy's plot, and then
Oh yeah, no,
it's like he's seducing the woman until the guy tries to kill him. Yeah,
and it tells you what you're in for. You're in for something that's a little bit beyond. You're in for. I mean, it establishes everything you're going to get. Right, you're right, Phil. How does he deal with villains? But that tuxedo, the sex.
Using woman as a human shield,
using woman as a human shield. I was going to say borderline misogyny, but we can probably say just right over the border, no border there at all. All the cues are built in right from that opening scene. So if for some reason you didn't know what a James Bond film was, you knew before that song began. And then that song probably hit
something iconic. One of my favorite things to come out of this is, let me share my screen, is a Life magazine cover of Eaton.
Oh,
have that
great.
Cover. Love that cover. So
did that come out before the movie, or that was like one of the promotional things? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, she was everywhere. She was the face of the movie, even more than Connery. Directly.
Not to be in the
yeah. But still, I mean, she was on billboards, the size of God knows what. She was.
They had to talk her into it. She's like, as long as it's tasteful, I'll do it. Like her manager had to really talk her into it. Like it has to be kept tasteful and
for the scene itself, right.
For the scene itself, yeah.
Right. And today it's extraordinarily chaste, but at that time, that
shoulder
was the borderline. Well, the whole thing. I mean, that's the Austin Powers parody, right? Like the pineapple in front of the private parts, or picking up the sausage and carrying it. But she's masked in just the right way. But that had to be an extraordinarily sexually charged. It wasn't, even today. I mean, beautiful woman, and and the whole. And
they didn't have intimacy coordinators back then.
No,
so, good for her for standing her ground on that,
right?
Being really firm.
Totally exotic with the gold, and it was just, it had to be off the charts, to see that. And that's the thing you can't really connect with. That's the time machine effect of a movie like that. As entertaining as it is, and it is.
It's like watching Psycho, and they're like, people were upset about this.
Right?
This
yeah. No. Exactly. Right. Yeah. No. You're right. That's it. Right. It was game changing, in that way, and had to affect people really viscerally. That now you're sort of like, well, I saw that on Boy Meets World last week, like that's a scene from Young Shelton or something, I mean, it's like, and spray painted one of his kids, his friend's gold, to see what happened. But
Bazinga.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was waiting once he discovers her and he picks up the phone and calls what's his face, and he's like, the girl's dead. And I was waiting for him to say, "Oh, James, not another one."
Yeah, right. Which one, right? Doesn't he say something like that? Or it's the which girl, or
girl I slept with is dead. Oh, not another one, James.
Yeah. But yeah, Leiter's always been like the weird link in these movies to me, because he's just, he's his CIA friend, and he always depends on. But was there ever any consistency with that character, Lilith? I mean, isn't it like a different actor?
Whatever the plot demands.
But it's like, isn't it a different actor every single movie? I don't think there's a consistent Felix Leiter.
I think there might be like a 2-movie streak, if I'm remembering right.
But you think they would have established that? I mean, they made, Moneypenny, M, Q, all
Who
of
went
them.
on to do like 15 of the like first 16, yeah.
Right,
A lot
right.
of these people stuck around.
But you
For
think
a
they
long
could have
time.
locked in Felix Leiter, but it didn't really seem to.
American, he doesn't matter
I
at the end
guess,
of the
right?
day.
Yeah, maybe that was it was the British casting. Like we don't really
Let me
care.
see. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different. Yeah.
But
And
Leiter's
Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright, right, was the latest, right? So,
Yeah.
but Leiter's not in every movie, so that might be that might still be a different actor for every movie.
I think it is.
That might be a different actor for every movie that Leiter showed up in.
It's a spies getting like plastic surgery.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, Jeffrey Wright did 3 movies. So
did he really?
Everybody, I'm seeing everybody. No, David Hedison had 2. 1973 and 1989, where Jeffrey Wright had 2006, 2008, and 2021.
Okay, I remember him distinctly.
Jeffrey Wright's the most consistent.
Yeah, so right, and probably the one.
There's at least a 2-movie stretch. I just didn't remember which.
Right, right, and Jeffrey Wright probably is the most.
Definitely not the old, not the pre-modern Bond stuff. Definitely not.
No, they're a little more disposable. Going to the Nicolas Cage school of Face Off, change my look.
I mean, well, these days with contracts, they lock them down more, right? There, it's like, oh yeah, we got you for three movies or whatever.
Right.
I was gonna say they probably didn't do that back in the day, did they? Unless you were the star. I mean, they probably
even then they would get a lot of these guys. Why they end up only being Bond once is they got full of themselves being Bond, and it's like, babes, you're not Doctor Who. Even Doctor Who's replaceable. Don't British don't play that. They do not play that.
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, but you think they would have wanted to be locked in, to a character like that? That would be a nice.
But also, again, like their heads get so big so quickly. Sorry, Timothy, don't.
Yeah.
Even Connery got to a point where he thought he could do no wrong and got replaced. So.
No, I thought he left. Didn't he leave? I thought
that's his story.
Well, that's his story. But yeah, but I think that was always the story that I knew and bought into, was that he didn't get replaced. He wanted out after
then he wanted back in, and
and then they offered him like an enormous amount of money to come back for Diamonds Are Forever, right? Because I mean, there's like $2 million, which was outrageous at that point, an outrageous amount of money. But and I have a sweet spot for Never Say Never Again. I'll be honest, but just.
Moonraker is my jam, not gonna lie.
Moonraker is outrageous fun. I will admit it is outrageous fun. It is.
And that's what I go to a spy movie for, fun. Which is like everybody kind of poo-poos on Mission Impossible and I was like, well, it's a 2-parter,
The only problem,
either you get it or you don't.
The Mission Impossible movies are eminently entertaining, but I will tell you, I cannot remember for the life of me. Plot. I cannot. Not a single one. Not a single one. I could tell you chapter and verse right now, like the basic plot of probably every James Bond movie, and give you at least one key scene and something. I can't remember a thing.
I remember all the stunts. I remember the big stunts from each Mission Impossible movie. That's about it.
Yeah, but some I remember them more because they were drilled into your head, because there's so many specials about Tom Cruise being a lunatic, and like, here's him making special gloves to climb, the super tower in Dubai or whatever.
Or he's actually hanging on to that airplane. That's not.
Oh my God! How many times did we see that during commercial? I know. I think that's probably why I stopped watching commercials. To be quite honest,
right.
Particular thing.
Right. But they, to their credit too, and they're well-made movies. They're very
in the moment you are sucked in, you are having fun,
and they have captured. They have captured the vibe of the Bond films in that way, where they do a good balance of. I think they would benefit more from having Auric Goldfingers, as opposed to every single thing seeming to be always that. It's they're the rogue agents. right? Every single one seems to be
they're like framed for.
They're framed exactly. They're framed.
It's
and
like, call the A-team at this point. Like, you've been framed, so get the A-team on this. This is
right. But like, why not just send them on a mission against an Auric Goldfinger? I mean, I guess that's kind of what they're doing.
Well, they had one of those that didn't do so good.
Oh, maybe that's why.
They stick to the formula.
Maybe that's why. But they do have that great combination of energy and stunts and
I call it American James Bond, basically.
Yeah, totally.
But I mean, too, how many different James Bonds have we had? I mean, it's been Tom Cruise for almost 30 years now.
And that's by design.
Oh yeah.
That's his. He bought the rights to that franchise. He's gonna ride that sucker out. Okay.
Yeah, and
1996. It's been Tom Cruise ever since.
He's done it. Yeah, he's done it.
That's why I said I definitely think eventually they're gonna have. I think the franchise deserves to be rebooted with more consistency.
The Bond one.
Yeah.
I hate what do you know? You're clearly a Bond fan that outstrips my own interest in its own way. I mean, what did you think of the whole, the last movie, like the whole death of Bond and stuff? Like, I
thought it was a mistake. It's like just because he doesn't want to do it, he's not the franchise. Like,
right.
That was really weird.
Right. It felt very. I felt the same way. Like, why end it like that? It doesn't give any extra credit to Craig, and it doesn't really do anything for the continuance of the series. Like, where do you go? Because the series isn't really, is loosely connected.
It's not one person. It's been how many
Right. But now that you kill him in the movie, and I don't think the audience is going to care one way or the other if you do it right.
I think that's what I'm saying. They definitely have to reboot it for more consistency, so that maybe one person gets to do 4 or 5, or I don't think they could do the whole franchise personally. They'd have to get somebody that's like 18, and that's not going to be believable.
Right. But Craig wasn't. Craig did 4 or 5. He extended it out. I mean, they've all done about that when they do their run. Over time, they get exhausted, or they age themselves out of the part. Or you're like Roger Moore, and everyone loves you so much, you just stick around until you're there with Q's giving you a special walker. It's like, pay attention, 007. The golf balls on the bottom are actually made of, nitroglycerin. Tap them twice, and blow a hole in the floor.
And that's why I always said it would have been better as a TV. I think it would be great as a TV show, honestly.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
That way, every book can be a season, and
right.
That way you're shooting it back to back a little more easily.
Right.
You can plan the budget out better, and just have a better time frame, and you can kind of all the disputes, because it's easier to negotiate for a TV show if they're willing to do it for, say, because that's automatic 5 to 7 year lock-in for a TV show, whereas usually a movie deal's like 3 to 5.
Right. The weight they've got to lift it, but I think that they want that sense of cinematic history. Yeah, that
well,
a
TV
movie
now, prestige TV, you can definitely get it. Do 6 episodes, but in every the BBC Sherlock. I mean, they only had 3 episodes a season, and they were like anywhere between 90 to 2 hours.
Yeah, those were movies.
Event for every episode.
Right, those are 3 movies.
Very much.
You're totally right. Yeah, I mean, it could play that out.
I'm excited for something new for Bond. Honestly, it's time.
Yeah, no, it'll be tricky to navigate with all the spycraft in cinema, around it. So they have to find their own zone. They can't be Bourne, they can't be Mission Impossible. They have to.
They're Bond. They're the first, and they're the
right. But you have to deliver on that, and you have to deliver on that with. I
don't know who they could cast at this particular moment.
That's what I was going to ask you two, as big fans. Who would you want to see? Is there anyone you want to see as Bond?
I can't think of anybody, to be quite honest, right now.
I mean, I was rooting for Idris Elba.
He said he didn't want it. So
no, I know that. I know, but I
out the window.
I would have. I mean, and now he's a little bit older, but I think he would have been phenomenal. I mean, but he's
who would be good. I know he's a little bit of a loose cannon, but Christian Bale, or the guy who played Merlin, I think his name is Colin Morgan, the dark-haired guy, not the guy that played the prince, but that actually played Merlin in Merlin, or Cillian Murphy. Sorry.
Yeah. He'd be a more angular, and that would be kind of
his way out with his cheeks,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't need anything. I've got it right here. But he would be interesting. He would be really. That would be the sort of casting like Craig was actually.
Yeah.
Because when Craig was cast, there was all, and everything's forgotten once he walks out of the ocean like in his Speedo, and he's beautiful and he's got all that Daniel Craig charisma.
A blind Bond.
Right, but like shaking a stir. Do I look like I give a damn? But there was all that animus against him because he didn't look like Bond, right? He didn't look like Roger Moore. He didn't look like Pierce Brosnan. He didn't look like Sean Connery. He didn't carry himself in that way. So I think you're probably onto something there, in that that's the way they have to go. Is a Cillian Murphy? It's somebody who is against expectations, because then you introduce something new. You're not trying to kind of recast Sean Connery or Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig. You're bringing in a new edge to it.
Even he's a little bit too old.
Yes.
Bell is especially too old. But
Right. And but I think that's the angle, if you will, to kind of go for. Then people are going along with you to discover things like they did with Craig, to a certain extent. Like Craig, Casino Royale starts off as like a we are competing with the Bourne identity, or the Bourne movies to start with, but then it finds, a pretty good rhythm. It finds a good dynamic. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a ways out though, right? I mean, there's nothing going on. There's no casting. There's no news.
Actually, if we're gonna go a little bit younger, maybe James McAvoy. But I feel like that's too, like, really trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle James Moore. I wanted to go a little bit against the grain for sure.
Right.
And I feel like that would be an obvious kind of choice.
I mean, for James Bond, do you have to have a name, or is this a role like a newcomer could come in and make their name that way?
At this point, they want a name. You don't have to, but they want one.
But that again is wrong.
Yeah, but that's executive speak,
No, I know that's executive speak, but like everybody who comes into the role and does well in
Cox, right? Like, I think that was
right. But like who was Sean Connery?
Sean
Connery, right? Sean Connery was nobody. Roger Moore was a TV star. Pierce Brosnan was probably the most expected because everybody had been anticipating him forever. Daniel Craig, who the fuck's that? It's sort of, I'm leaving Timothy Dalton out of it. There were things I liked about Timothy Dalton, but I think that it can be a nobody. In some ways, it should be a nobody, or lesser known.
That way you don't have like all that baggage of what they've done before. I do like the idea, but like just in this modern era of where everything needs to be a pre-established IP, let's hire somebody with a name so they have a built-in fan base. That way we don't have to do that much marketing. That whole spiel.
Well, like I said, I like when a superhero movie, like if I'm not familiar as familiar with the actor, because sometimes it takes me on. I'm like, instead of, oh hey, that's Batman, no, that's Ben Affleck in a Batman suit.
Right.
Bad Batman suit.
I mean, I read a headline today. I don't know if it's true or not, but because it's on the internet, so who the fuck knows? But it's it was like Warner Brothers executives scared of lesser known actors playing Superman.
Because their scripts are trash.
Because
sorry.
Well, no,
we haven't had really good scripts for like somebody to be like, oh, I don't care who it is.
Right, but they're
the opposite of the Marvel approach, where
but whoever
matter, not the actor.
Right. But that's it, right? I can't remember who Gunn is cast as Superman, but they're freaking out because it's not whatever. Oh, we haven't cast this name level actor as Superman, but yeah, that didn't work out so well with Christopher Reeve. But the other thing is, I mean, Warner Brothers, I think, is so disconnected from what Superman should be anyway. Like they're always, you spent so much money and time leaning into the Snyderverse, and that, for fuck's sake, wasn't. I swear a lot more on the evening shows, but that wasn't Superman. So
no, they looked at the whole Justice League through like the Batman lens, and it's like no, that don't work for Superman.
That was the whole problem, and that's why I like James Gunn's approach. I don't care really who it is, as long as they can act and emote and have hope in their eyes. Jeez,
and have hope.
Superman's about.
Be a nice guy. Yeah, come on.
Right.
Like I said, I got a glimmer of hope with the new stuff that they're doing for the new Trinity, you know, Wonder Woman's daughter and Batman and Superman's son, where they name it Gen S, and it's for hope after, you know, the S on Superman's chest. And I was just like, yes, that's what your universe should be.
Right.
So I think James Gunn has that lens as well. I think he does understand that if you're going to build your foundation, it needs to be on Superman, and Superman needs to be built on hope and positivity, not grimness.
Right.
And again, brings us back to this movie. It is fun.
It is
not
fun.
dark
It's a tremendously let's wrap that back to this. I mean, it is a crackerjack fun movie. It's a great that's
and it's beautiful.
It's
beautiful.
beautiful.
It's beautifully made. It's beautifully crafted.
Right.
Honestly.
As much as I've always I've enjoyed this movie many times on video, you know, and DVD or whatever. But I would, if I had a time machine, I would love to have gone to see this in the theater with an audience.
I'm surprised they're not putting it back in the theaters this year. Honestly, you know,
but even so, it wouldn't be the experience would never recapture. You could show it on the biggest screen in the world, and that energy, like you said, that fun, that being exposed to that for the first time, you know, would feel like the great moments of cinema. I'm sure, you know, I mean, I can remember, as I'm sure you guys can, you know, very distinct cinematic moments, right? Seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, seeing Poltergeist, seeing E.T., you know, for me, these are like moments that are like burned into, you know, my memory. And I think seeing this movie in a theater with an audience at the height of the James Bond craze would have been just electrifying.
Oh yeah, the one I can imagine strikes me because maybe it's just my time.
89.
Batman 89, yeah, because I mean, you just watch the news. There's lines around theaters. I mean, people shaving bats into their side of their heads and stuff, and just sold out shows. And
For I mean, me, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like that Batman. I mean, that was the talk of the whole summer. You know, nowadays you're lucky if you get a couple weeks of like, you know, good
week.
press.
Yeah, our attention.
And there's another movie rolling out. But yeah,
right. And it's hard. It's hard to have that energy, you know, because there's not something that captures the cultural zeitgeist in that same way. And frankly, I mean, Barbenheimer was the closest, right? I think, you know, in terms, that was the last time and the longest time I can remember the theater actually being full. I mean,
packed and people actually having fun. And it's
Barbie.
Well, I don't know how much fun you're going to have at Oppenheimer, but
even so, movie, I mean, both. I went back to back, and both screenings were full, and the theater was full. The theater was like crackling, you know, like people lining up for popcorn, getting their tickets, like the atrium or the lobby. You know, I went to see Beekeeper. You know, so you know, I should have had a drinking game of how many times Jason Statham said a bee pun. But
we should do that for the Patreon then, Phil, when it comes on DVD.
Exactly, like, you know, just take a shot every time. But you know, that to me is the more typical movie experience these days. There's nobody in the lobby. You know, there's one moribund, you know, sort of person who checks your digital ticket for some reason. You know, there's a couple of zombies at the popcorn stand. Nobody checks you going into the theaters, you know, like, so you sort of like just drift into the thing. And there's like maybe 7 people in the theater, you know, and they roll in at the last second to see the Nicole Kidman thing. And then
you went to AMC. You went to AMC.
It's the only game in town.
You know what? That always gets me when you're sitting in an AMC theater and that Nicole Kidman thing comes on. I'm like, why are we?
Dim the lights.
Why are we having a commercial for AMC when you're sitting in an
AMC theater? But the thing about it, I love now. I mean, I've always thought it was horrible and stupid, but it's like, you know, she's drolling on about, like, you know, the things you can only see in theaters, you know. And it's a bunch of fucking movies from, like, you know, 5 years ago, right? It's like Creed and Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
and like, you know, it's like, yeah, I can see these all on streaming video. Like, there's nothing here. Like, kind of insert like new movies or something into it. But point again being, like, there's no, you know, the energy of a movie like this is fun now. It's fun to watch it. You know, to pay attention to it, to get a kick out of it, and
I think it'll be like that again when the next Bond movie comes out. I think because they're just going to take a break and make sure people actually want it.
Well, yeah,
that was kind of the problem. Like, they had kind of done too many back to back, and they were kind of like to varying degrees of success.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next time that they do it, they're going to wait till it's like at a fever pitch and really.
Right.
Well, and again, it's like there's not too many things you can say that about with Bond. I mean, pretty much every generation since the '60s has had their James Bond. So
sure, but
it's time for a new one. I don't know how Gen Z is going to react to it.
Well, there you go, and it's a, they played the "you're a dinosaur" Bond card, pretty hard, through the Craig era. So I don't know what you do exactly, in that way, but I think it's also just like the cultural thing of like the pop cultural thing, rather, I should say, of you've now got a lot of competing spy franchises. And before you had spy franchises following Bond, which could never quite measure up, right? You had Dean Martin's, boozy Matt Helm thing. You had, the James Coburn's, look at what my lighter can do, Flint movies, which I love, but, burned hot and then, flamed out really quickly. But now, you've got Mission Impossible. You've got Bourne, which is coming back again, apparently. You've got the,
Jack Reacher.
You got a Jack Reacher-ish thing. You got a Jack Ryan-ish thing. You've got a what's the Kingsman, type of things. There's Argyle, whatever's coming out soon, which is another spy, riff. So, and a lot of these play in similar territory,
But so there's only one Bond.
There's only one Bond, but how does he raise to the top, right? That could literally say on those posters, Lilith, right? Sean Connery is James Bond. There's, nobody does it better. And you believed it, right? You believed it if you were a theater goer. But I really am interested in seeing how they capture that, because just casting X and saying it's a new Bond film. Okay.
Yeah, I think it has to be the right story too. And
it's got to be an event. It's got to be Avatar level, really, to work. It's got to have, they'd never get James Cameron interested in making one of these
things.
Just
to be clear, please don't remake Goldfinger.
No. But exactly.
I don't want you to do that.
But it's got to have that thing, right? It's got to have that James Cameron, Christopher Nolan ability to sort of manufacture something.
That's a good point.
Of an event
to direct.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and the Paul Giamatti did an interview recently where he just basically said, I would love to be a Bond villain.
No.
And they should just cast him right then and there, because he would be epic.
Have you ever seen Cold Souls? Oh my God.
Yes, no.
He's an epic villain.
Is he in it?
Oh yeah, he's the main star. He's like an artist. I'll just, because even if I give you the plot, you'll never get the plot twist. He's an artist. He's it's this alternate universe where you can trade souls, and his his little soul it's literally a little black stone, and he gets this Russian artist soul, and he just starts weeping and actually feeling emotion for the first time.
I got to check it out. No, but I mean, he would be
he's an excellent villain.
Yeah, you need somebody like him to kind of step in and elevate the whole thing, right? That whole aspect. That was maybe that's the one that failed. I don't know if that was what you meant, but I remember that's the most memorable villain from the Mission Impossible movies to me is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes.
Right? He was a real villain. That's the one that didn't work out so well? Okay, well.
But we did enjoy him. I remember the reviews for that. I was like, yeah, he's the best thing about this movie.
Right, but he was incredible, and he was a villain. He was just, unexpected and dangerous, and that felt like there were odds.
I'm gonna hurt her.
Stakes.
I'm gonna hurt her.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty good. Yeah. Tragic.
So I think that's what they need to do, right? Stack the deck. You need a big name Bond. You need a big name villain. You need a big name director.
Yeah, right.
Big name Bond girls.
Spare no expenses on the marketing, because I'm not gonna say what movie needs some more marketing, but there have been a couple movies lately that have needed some more marketing.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, since
make the car again.
Since Amazon
wheels
owns MGM at this point, right? Didn't they get all the rights to the Bond films? Hopefully, they can insert some commercials into the new movie.
Because they have MGM Plus, so it's just what are we doing here? Why MGM Plus? What's going on here?
All right, guys, I gotta jump. but even though I'm on my own, I got to finish my
you have to finish his chores.
my chores, my thing, the things I've begun must be finished. Thank you for the chance to have some fun with this. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
All right, thank you, sir. Hey, before we hit the ejector seat, do you want to plug anything besides Daredevil Black Armor and Axel's Inferno?
Nope. You know, go buy Buck. Well, you can't really buy Axel's Infernal, but we'll definitely go buy. Yeah, definitely go buy Daredevil Black Armor. We're on the penultimate issue, as fancy words, and so let's go for that. Exactly. Shrink. Folks, be well. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, kids. Kiddo. That was James. All right, should we do our plugs?
I guess. I mean.
All right, kid. Well, kids, yes. If you want to be if you're famous and you want to be interviewed by us,
you want to hang out and talk about cool stuff other than your other stuff.
Exactly. Or you want to do both, email us, CapesandLunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And you could help we'll find all our stuff, episodes, social media, merchandise. Help support us by buying merchandise or dropping money on us with the Cash App link, or go support. What? Oh, yes. Yes, please make it rain all over us with a Cash App link.
Make it rain.
Asking for the Southgate, eh?
Make it rain. Why did your eye drift over to my box?
Or the Patreon, because again, we're getting crazier and crazier over there. You will not believe it. No matter how many F-bombs Gigi Chichester dropped tonight, it's even crazier over on the Patreon.
In February, you'll leave you saying, ooh, that's kind of naughty.
No, it's
more vicious and brutal than ever.
Because it is, yes.
Oh, that's naughty.
But it's naughty, and
I love it. I'm going to eat this up with a fork and spoon.
All right, kids. So find everything at tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. All right. And find Granny Hellfire on the Facebook.
I encourage you to download both our podcasts, Capes and Lunatics and Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast feeds. Listen to them while you're outside, getting some fresh air, looking at the sky, and touching grass while we have them, because Antarctica is going to be a beachfront town pretty soon. So just enjoy it.
We got enough content. You can stay outside all day. The podcast, the Patreon, or YouTube channel. Yeah. If you're more of a visual person, the YouTube. Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining us, kids. Thank you, Mr. Chichester. 2 times today. That's it.
He's really a part of the team now, doing 2 a day.
I know it's good. I know it's gonna be another week before I'm like, hey, you want to do another full regular show? Lilith's like, I know. All right, kids. For another we should have had him do ampersand. Damn it. For another week, we have been your Capes and
Lunatics.
Yay.
We'll just get Justin to do it, and you can play the sound effect.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, we just need to record him doing all our stuff. In a world of Capes and Lunatics. You expect me to be done? No, team. I expect you to podcast. Good night.